Joining us now is Lord Richard Dannatt, former head of the British Army and former defence advisor to David Cameron. David Cameron keeps cropping up today, doesn't he? Thank you for joining us, Lord Dannatt. I've been to three of these marches, and I have a sort of slight problem when Suella Braverman describes them as hate marches, and everybody says, "How you can't use that sort of language? That's outrageous." Well, as I just said, it's a strange kind of situation. They're good-natured, they're not menacing, but there is a lot of hate towards Israel. That is the main factor of these demonstrations. It is anti-Israel placards. I saw the Israeli flag entwined with a swastika and so on and so forth. There was a sign saying Gaza twinned with Auschwitz and so on and so forth, from the river to the sea, when will Palestine be free? That is the nature of these demonstrations. There's surprisingly little calls for a ceasefire, surprisingly few calls for the release of the hostages. It's all about free Palestine. So when she says they are hate marches, they are infused with a kind of hatred of Israel. So she's not inaccurate about this.
Well, I think you're right as far as that's concerned. I think it's very disappointing that slogans that you've just referred to, which are known to be anti-Israel and anti-Jewish and therefore racist, are being tolerated on our streets. And I think that's a real shame. I think it's a real shame, particularly that this all came to a head over the Armistice and Remembrance weekend. And I talked to a number of veterans, particularly some elderly D-Day veterans last week, and they were quite clear that actually what they had fought and fallen for, and their comrades had fallen for back in the Second World War, was for freedom of speech and freedom for people to express their views. And I think that's a really important part of our democracy. But what is not right is that if slogans and chants are clearly of a racist nature, clearly directed, as these ones appear to be, against Israel, a country that has a right to exist, then that is not right itself, and that is something that the police should be bearing down on much more strongly. So I think it's a very mixed result as far as this weekend is concerned.
We know that some people organising these marches have rather unscrupulous links, let's say. There's been intelligence suggesting some people are connected directly to Hamas and to Iran. Seeing that these are gathering momentum and getting bigger every weekend, how much of a threat are they to, let's say, our national security? And should Sunak be considering doing essentially what Suella Braverman said and going in the direction of France and saying, look, we can't afford to have these taking place anymore?
Well, I think this is something that our political leaders and indeed the Israeli political leaders need to take into account. Public opinion in a democracy is extraordinarily important. Rishi Sunak has made some very interesting cabinet reshuffle moves this morning. Clearly, one of those is very much as a response in his mind to what we have to now accept he would have regarded as inappropriate comments by Suella Braverman last week. Suggestion that actually her comments maybe inflamed the situation, maybe increased the size of the crowds that came out on Saturday. But public opinion is important, and political leaders have to take public opinion into account, particularly in a democracy. Now, that's one thing to say that about the UK, but it's quite another thing to say as far as Israel is concerned. Israel is committed to its mission to preserve its own freedom and to destroy Hamas. And it looks as if they're going to go ahead with that, whatever world opinion is. Monsieur Macron has already called for a ceasefire. Rishi Sunak hasn't, Joe Biden hasn't. But I think just watch this space.
Lord Richard Dannatt, former head of the British Army, thank you so much for your time. This is the point, is in a way, Suella Braverman's criticisms were proved. Yeah. There were 126 arrests of the right-wing demonstrators and only about 20 of the pro-Palestine. And there are a lot more pro-Palestine people there. So Suella's kind of right when she says the cops play favourites.
I mean, what is extraordinary in France is you've got Macron calling for a ceasefire, but at the same time he said none of these pro-Palestinian marches, but there has been a big march in France basically saying that we've got to end anti-Semitism.
I wish we could have one of those.
Yeah, no, quite, exactly. It's extraordinary times we are living in.